Thank you, team, for starting the recording. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this event. It's so nice to see you. Welcome to this 2022 regional conversation. This gathering is focused on the East Bay and the areas of Alameda County and Contra Costa County. And my name is Rachel Osajima. I am the director of the Alameda County Arts Commission. And the Alameda County Arts Commission is happy to be the local co-host of this event with the Arts and Culture Commission of Contra Costa County, led by Jenny Belial. So welcome. Today's event is the first of 11 regional conversations presented by Californians for the Arts. At this event, you will learn about the latest news on federal and state arts advocacy policies, and we hope this will also be a way for us to connect with each other and strengthen advocacy in our region. I think we'll see on the screen here today's agenda. So for today, there'll be updates from Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. Then we will hear from all of you with reflections and ideas for 2022 priorities. We will talk about strengthening advocacy in our region. And then we'll have closing remarks and information about upcoming Californians for the Arts programs and ways for all of you to be involved. So thank you again for coming to today's meeting. I just want to extend my sincere appreciation to all of you for all you do to support arts, culture, and creativity in the East Bay. And now I'd like to hand it over to Jenny Belial, the Managing Director of the Arts and Culture Commission of Contra Costa County.
Thank you, Rachel. I just want to say that we, as the Arts and Culture Commission of Contra Costa County, are so grateful to be here today for this East Bay regional conversation. And I get to do a little bit of the house cleaning today. So we would like to just go over a few of the basics for the Zoom meeting guidelines. And so if you could please introduce yourself in the chat, include your pronouns, and acknowledge the indigenous land where you reside. Also, to enable closed captioning, just please click the live transcript icon on the Zoom menu below, menu bar. And please use the raise hand function if you'd like to speak or put your questions in the chat. And please mute your audio when you're not speaking. We'd really appreciate that. We want to hear what you say, but if you can do that. Also, be mindful of your own input, and so no long speeches. And use wait. What does that mean? What am I? Why am and aren't I talking? Let others speak and finish thoughts. Make space, take space equitably. And this meeting will be recorded and available for viewing later. So without ado, I would like to introduce the amazing Julie Baker, the Executive Director of Californians for the Arts and the California Art Advocates.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Jenny and Rachel, and to Cara, Tracy, and Eddie. I think actually I'm going to hand it back to, maybe we could see the next slide. And so I can have an idea of where we are. There we go. I'm actually going to hand it off to Tracy Hudak, who is the Programs Manager and Organizational Advancement Manager for Southern California here on our team at Californians for the Arts. Tracy? Or maybe not. All right, so instead, maybe I'll...
Tracy was on mute.
Okay.
Julie, we're going to switch this back. That's totally fine. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to put some contact information in the chat for you in order to be directly in contact with Cara Smith, the Northern California representative, and my contact information as well. And we just wanted to give you a little bit of background information that California for the Arts, California Arts Advocates are actually two partner organizations. If you weren't already aware of that. Arts Advocates, it's what's called a 501c6. It is a nonprofit organization that is structured so that it can do direct lobbying with legislators and work on policy, etc. And then California for the Arts is your statewide advocacy network, developing a grassroots movement to influence resources and policies to strengthen the arts, both locally and statewide. And both organizations are driven by membership support. In particular, California Arts Advocates, because it's a 501c6, it's not eligible for traditional nonprofit funding. So support, more, we'll put some membership information in the chat. But just wanted you to know, these two organizations work tandemly in partnership, both in terms of direct lobbying and then developing on. Next one. And I'll let Cara take over the next slide. I'll get some information for you guys in the chat.
Hi, thanks, Tracy. My name is Cara Smith, and I am the manager of programs and organizational advancement, just like Tracy, but for Northern California. And I just want to say thank you so much to Jenny and Rachel for partnering on this conversation, and to our whole team here for helping. We're just really excited to be sharing space with you all today. And I wanted to just quickly mention that we do have, this is the very first of our regional conversation series for 2022. We'll be hosting 11 total conversations, and I will put a link in the chat to find out more about the other regional conversations that you may or may not be interested in attending, depending on where you're located and where you work. So thank you for that. And I also just want to acknowledge that I am currently coming to you from unceded Washoe territory in Northern California. And so what brings us here today, where we're going to kind of start, is to sort of recap a little bit about what we heard during our last regional conversations, and sort of where, and then go into where that's what the last year, how that informed the last year of activity, and then look forward to where we're going this year in 2022, and want to be in discussion with you in regards to that, several iterations during this conversation today. And so what is on your screen, and I know it might be a little small, so I want to just acknowledge here as well that we will be sharing this slide deck after the meeting, and we will be sharing this information so you're able to see it in a larger form on your own screens if the text is small here. So I just wanted to talk about last year, around this exact same time, around January and February, we hosted 9 regional conversations with 26 local partners across the state of California, and we're lucky to have around 800 registrants in that, and that the data and the sort of feedback and input we got from those discussions helped inform a lot of our work over the course of 2021. And some of what we heard there were about current challenges, and those primary challenges in 2021, and we'll have a chance to sort of evaluate where we're at now, included lack of funding and lost revenue, especially due to COVID-19 crisis, canceled programs, again, largely due to COVID-19's impact on our industry, ambiguity on permitted activities under reopening guidelines, which I know is still an active conversation as we continue to still be in COVID's grasp, and addressing racial equity challenges, which we want to hold some space for today as well. And then we also kind of took a snapshot of where everyone was at, or everyone who shared information with us was at with their current advocacy efforts. So many of the advocates who attended our regional conversations shared that they did speak with elected officials about community updates, about COVID-19 related issues and potential funding opportunities, and were in touch primarily with their city council members and state level representatives. And we'll kind of go into some opportunities and ideas for that soon. And so with that, I'm going to hand this over to Julie Baker again to get us started with updates.
Thank you so much, Cara. So Julie Baker, Executive Director, Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm coming from the unceded land of the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan, otherwise known as Nevada City, California, about an hour outside of Sacramento. And Eddie, if you can advance to the next slide, we'll go ahead and get started on my part of the presentation. So based on a lot of what you all informed us in our regional conversations last year, that really helped us to determine our advocacy priorities. And I just wanted to start with good news, although we're all still very much in the midst of COVID, as we know, and we're hearing from you about that. And some of us have now even had COVID, and I think some of us are in the fog of COVID currently even. So, you know, we just want to also hold space for that people are still dealing with this and understanding of that. If you could, Sandy Walker, that would be awesome, because that is what's causing the sound that we're hearing right now. Or maybe our host, Sandy Walker, that are not yet muted, that would be great. So quickly, some of our advocacy successes in 2021 included over $600 million invested into arts recovery. Thanks, Sandy. Advocacy engagement increased by over 300%. That means you guys engaged with us. We got our first creative workforce bill signed into law. And we saw things like mayors and other civic leaders recognize the value of arts investments for California recovery and helping us to get those specific investments at the state level. If we could advance the next slide, please. So again, just some quick, and these this deck will be available if you're interested in looking at this more, but you know, we did this impact survey, and that was really important. We had over 600 arts workers and 1,000 arts workers and 600 arts organizations fill out that survey. We used Wolf Brown Consulting to support us on that survey, and that really helped to inform our advocacy last year as well, and to indicate the impact of COVID specifically on our industry. We launched that with the Otis report. We were quoted in the New York Times and talking about how if we don't really address this, we are going to see a cultural depression in the state of California. And that really did get us a lot of attention and help to build public awareness of what was happening. We also launched some media campaigns like Restart Arts California and Artists Are Second Responders, which we continue to use as our messaging guidelines. We produced some webinars with USC Keck School of Medicine and arts leaders on reopening the arts safely. And all of our webinars are available on our website for free that you can look at in our archived events. Over 1,000 of you joined us for Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month, just specifically in terms of webinars and activations. Over 5,000 of you sent in letters to help get us to a place where we could realize those historic investments. And along the way, Californians for the Arts also helped over 1,500 organizations in applying for California Relief Grant and the California Venues Grant programs. And then maybe you remember in July, when the California Arts Council, some of you may have recalled, came out and they had at that point only funded 21% of grant applicants, and Californians for the Arts pushed for them to really release more funding since they had received it in the governor's budget to get more funding out into the field immediately, which they did and doubled those investments. Next slide. In California Arts Advocates, we're really excited that on October 9th, we spent a lot of time working on this last year, our first bill that we sponsored, which is the California Creative Workforce Act. It was authored by Senator Ben Allen. It was signed by the governor in October. It's Senate Bill 628. I want to be very clear about this bill because it's really exciting. However, it was signed what they call upon appropriation, which means that it waits for, it has to have a budget designation, an appropriation. It did not have one last year. And so we are in the midst this year of asking for that budget appropriation for SB 628, a $50 million appropriation to what we would, in our numbers, looks to be about 1,000 jobs in the creative workforce. So you'll learn more about that as we go along in this legislative session, which just began last week on January 3rd. And if you follow along with California Arts Advocates and Californians for the Arts, you'll see where you can engage to help make sure that we can get that budget appropriation this year. We also, again, saw $50 million specifically for cultural institutions in the California Relief Grant Program. We did a lot of negotiations for reopening guidelines, showing up in meetings with California Department of Public Health and GoBiz, and we continue those very open and collaborative conversations with both of those agencies that work directly in the administration to make sure that funding and resources are available for our industry. There's also, we did a lot of testifying, and as California Arts Advocates, we did a hearing in the Assembly. At that point, Sharon Quirk-Silva was the chair. It has now switched to Tasha Berner-Horvath as the chair of the Arts Assembly Committee. And we supported SB 805, which was subsidized payroll system for small budget arts organizations to help them comply with Assembly Bill 5, and which resulted in a budget allocation of $49.5 million from Cal OSBA, Office of Small Business Advocate. However, that program has not yet been released. So don't fear, you haven't applied for it yet. It's because it has not been released yet. Next slide. So I just want to pause and talk about who we are as an organization, our commitment to racial equity. Sorry, I just got a text, and how important that is for our organization and to the work that we do. I don't need to read this necessarily to you, but I wanted to just let you know some of the things that we do in terms of holding ourselves accountable, being transparent in our actions, and continuing to do the hard work, to have the hard conversations, to look at our own internal processes, doing our own internal assessments and audits, to make sure that we are actually leading and being a model for racial equity as a nonprofit arts organization. We, to that end, have been doing racial and cultural equity trainings within our own organization, and we just are launching with a new consulting group with an organizational effectiveness grant to internally work on, again, our own policies, procedures, and how we're looking at what we do at equity assessments on legislation that we might be proposing or budgets as well. So I just wanted to highlight that in terms of the work that we do, that this is a thread through all the work that we do and the practices that we have. It is not just sort of set aside, but it is embedded into all of our practices. Next slide. So just quickly on federal advocacy, I want to give you guys an update of what's happening. There is a $300 million bill called the Creative Economy Revitalization Act, or short for SARA, that has been introduced in both the House and the Senate. And we have two California supporters, bipartisan support, Representative Jay Obernolte and Senator Alex Padilla, who are supporting it. It's essentially a $300 million like WPA, Works Progress Administration bill for the 21st century. And that's really exciting. You see a 2022 NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, and National Endowment for Humanities annual appropriations. What's proposed in the House is $201 million, $182 million approximately in the Senate. And our current funding there is $167 million, and you also saw $135 million for ARP funds. Their infrastructure package, which has been passed, there was nothing specific for arts, but advocates have very specific asks to start to see more public art and arts integration. The SFOG Extension Act, we're trying to continue to push to extend allowable expenses from March 2020 to March 2023. Employee retention tax credits, potential COVID-19 relief, including targeted small business such as live events, and very exciting, yet not yet public, so you're the first to hear about this. We'll be learning more about the specifics of it, and you'll look for things on Friday. There's going to be a congressional hearing on the promise, peril, and peril and promise of the creative economy in the Small Business Committee, and Representative Judy Chu sits on that, so we'll have some activations for you on that as well. Next slide, please. I wanted to introduce a video from State Senator Ben Allen to share with you before we get into state advocacy updates, where he is the Joint Committee Chair on the Arts. So let's hear from State Senator Ben Allen. Don't think we can hear the sound. You're going to need to turn it up on the right there. Over here. Should be sound. Anybody? Eddie, are you trying to get a sound on this?
You've put in over the last couple of years during this
There we go.
incredibly difficult pandemic.
Can you hear now?
We know that artists not only have been at the front lines of suffering and bearing the brunt of the pandemic, but artists have also been at the front line of helping our society respond to and heal from the trauma associated with the pandemic and all the other challenges that we've had as a society over the last couple of years. Artists as second responders coming in and into the breach and helping our society come back together and heal as we have suffered from traumas. This, of course, has been something that I've been talking a lot about as we've been trying to get more money for the arts. And the arts did very well in the 2021-2022 budget. And I'm really happy to see the governor reiterate support for the arts in the upcoming budget proposal that he just presented. It was ridiculous how little we were funding arts when I first got into the legislature. And I'm just proud that we've all been able to come together and dramatically increase funding for arts through grants programs, California Arts Council, arts and education programs, and the list goes on and on. So one other thing I just want to mention, our Creative Workforce Act that we worked together on to get passed, which is going to try to create a mechanism for kids coming from underrepresented groups to get more pathways into the arts and into the creative industries. And it's something we're hoping to get funded. That's something I know I'll be working with many people from California for the arts in that endeavor and that effort. Just our door continues to be open. We're looking for opportunities to bring up new issues relating to arts policy. Everything from the TV film tax credit extension and expansion to arts in schools and what we can do to make sure that kids aren't slipping behind in terms of exposure to the arts in their education, to looking at the issues of arts as a healer, both for veterans, for folks who suffered from all sorts of different types of trauma, and then the everyday challenges that arts and artists have been facing, trying to make ends meet, trying to be successful and thrive under the changing climate here in our state. So I just want to welcome you, to thank you for your continued advocacy and engagement in arts policy. And as always, we have a very open door in our office. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
So thanks to Senator Ben Allen for that wonderful introduction. He is an incredible arts champion for us. He was the author of Senate Bill 628. And if we can go to the next slide, we can keep this going. Thanks everybody for your patience. So here's the state advocacy update, if I can give you that real quick. So I mentioned the SB 628, the California Creative Workforce Act, was signed last year. It's the first of its kind in the United States for a state to introduce a Creative Workforce Act. We now are asking for a $50 million appropriation. We are waiting on the Cal OSBA, Office of Small Business Advocate, to introduce a $49.5 million that we were able to get in the 21-22 budget. We are asking for the California Arts Council's ongoing budget allocation to increase from 26 million to 40 million, which would be $1 per capita for the arts. We are saying for cultural districts, which you'll see that the governor has put in his budget as of yesterday's announcement for $30 million over 3 years to expand that program, that they prioritize the equity recommendations from the September 2019 report. We're still talking about relief funding since we're still in the midst of what is happening due to the impact of COVID on the arts. And we are also looking at building out a series of roundtables on policy initiatives and ideas around arts and healing, creative workforce, and other areas as we build our priorities for next year and ongoing. So next slide. Just quickly, I wanted to share with you the California budget and advocacy timeline. You just need to keep clicking on that one, Eddie, if you could, and it'll show up. So right now, as you can see, we're in January. Yesterday, the governor made his budget announcement. Included for the arts was the $30 million for cultural districts over the next 3 years, as well as a $50 million program that would go through the state parks for arts installations, and about $178,000 in ongoing funds for the Poet Laureate program and other literary programs through the Arts Council. We did not, unfortunately, see any funding yet for Creative Workforce Act, nor did we see any increase in the ongoing general operating funds for the Arts Council, which to date is the only agency that really is focused on the arts and culture, nonprofit sector, creative workforce, and industries. We'll go to the next slide. What you'll start to see now is we'll start to address what we heard in the governor's budget. As California Arts Advocates, we will start to respond to that. We'll start to get our legislative champions, likely Senator Ben Allen, for example, and hopefully introducing a budget ask for the $50 million for the California Creative Workforce Act, so we can launch that program, hopefully in 2023, and some of our other commitments. It goes on until there's lots of meetings, lots of hearings, and if you're somebody who's really interested in all of this, you can follow along with us. Always reach out if you want any real specifics. We have a deck also specifically on the budget process that we can also share. And then by June 15th, the governor, the legislature has to pass a budget, and that's sent to the governor. He has about 12 days to sign or veto it. And then we get into follow-up and cleanup at that point, where you hear maybe the term trailer bill. I'm not gonna go into too much detail because I want to get us into any questions about this as well. So go to the next slide, please. And this just gives you an idea of what the budget looks like for this year. It is actually a overall $286 billion budget. There is a $31 billion budget surplus this year. I mean, it's so insane, the numbers, it's hard to fathom, but we are, as you all know, probably the 5th largest economy in the world, the state of California. This kind of gives you an overview and breakdown of how we get to that. And personal income tax is a large piece of why the state of California is able to rebound, as well as federal and the relief programs as well. So you can go to the next slide. And again, this was just an overview of what I stated earlier in terms of what's in the governor's budget. Now, this is just the first step in the budget process. He puts this forward, then there's a lot of negotiations back and forth with the legislature. The legislature gets to put their priorities forward. Hopefully some of the things that you all are looking for, we will talk about today. And if we see a common thread throughout all of our regional conversations, for example, that's part of what emboldens us to advocate for specific areas. Next slide. Great. So we have almost 10 minutes to just answer questions specifically about this. We can stop sharing at this point, and so we can see each other, engage in conversation, as we call this, which is regional conversations. So at this point, I just want to stop and see if anyone has any questions, either regarding who we are, what we do, or anything regarding the state or federal, what's the picture or what's been going on in terms of advocacy efforts at this point. We'll get into some more specifics about advocacy and how you can engage in the art of persuasion, and how you can also engage locally in advocacy as well in a minute. But this is just anything anyone wants to ask right now about any of this.
Hi.
Hi.
You can hear me? Okay, this is Danielle. Hey, I'm a visual artist, and I love it, advocate for art and culture, because my background is also Chinese. And so a lot of your conversations, and it's just kind of connect to my mind how the art can be healing and art can be advocated and can bring the community together, right? So I live in San Diego. So I'm actually also in transportation industry. So my background, I had a master's degree in landscape architecture, and then I'm a visual artist, and I have some murals painted, and actually one is specifically just before pandemic, it's called a Hope. So it's 20 by 50 feet mural. So my interest is really try to reach out to you, because I was looking for organizations so can help me guide it how to utilize my ability, I guess, to create arts and also understand the built environment with my 30 years practice in landscape architecture to really be able to help to with the healing process. And I'm also teaching some like Chinese calligraphy and ink painting. Actually, I got a couple of workshops already going last year. I think just from the experience, it's so healing to have people to be able to immerse themselves in the arts, to forget about the trouble of the world, right? So yeah, thank you so much for this session. I'm really glad that I attended, and I really would love to connect to your organization and to see, because of course doing art is without, you know, I don't know, it's really hard to survive by doing art. Even I have such a passion and heart to do it. So I do need some guidance and to see how that your organization can help me to be able to make a living, but also to create improve a quality for life for all by utilize my art ability.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for that, Danielle. And I think what we'll put in the chat is also, there is an organization specifically in San Diego, and Victoria Hamilton, I believe, is on this call. So it happens to be the president of the Board of California Arts Advocates, but is based in San Diego. So we'll put links to SDRAC in the chat there. But since this is the East Bay and there'll be a San Diego one as well, we want to make sure that we honor those folks who are here from the East Bay as well. So thank you for that. And we will be connecting with you specifically on, there was just specifically put in the chat also an artist opportunity. I did want to address a question from David Mack. Hi, David. And he's correct. So Lorena Gonzalez, who is the author of Assembly Bill 5, has actually resigned from the Assembly, is likely going to be the next chair of the California Labor Fed. She has been nominated for that. And so his question is there a renewed effort to fund SB 805 in this year's budget? So great question, David. That coalition is still meeting and making their determinations. Senator Rubio, who had been the champion in last year's legislative session, as you know, the governor vetoed SB 805, but a lot of the funding was put into the budget instead. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second. So 805 we are waiting to see if Senator Rubio is not going to take up the issue this year. Partly it's an election year, so she's really in district. There's going to be a lot of interesting shakeups in the legislature this year. It's an election year. There's a redistricting that just happened. So you're having some folks who actually were in separate districts are now actually in the same district. And so there might be two Democrats who are actually running up against each other. We're seeing that in some places in California. So, but specifically on 805, we are waiting to see what the coalition's move is on that, David. One of the issues is that because there was $49.5 million put into the budget already that has not yet even been released in terms of grant programs, it's difficult for us to make the argument that there is still needed funds for that particular issue until those funds are actually subscribed and hopefully oversubscribed. So that's number one. In terms of an ongoing legislative solution to the AB5's impact on small budget nonprofit performing arts organizations, I think we'll still are looking at that, but nothing has been determined yet. Madeline, I see your hand is up. Mandolin, apologies.
That's okay. Thank you so much for everything today. I just kind of had a question about what kind of synergy you guys may be seeing, or the best kind of points of connection between federal and state policy in connection with creating more equity within the arts, and not just equity in terms of the way that they are provided, but equity in connection with culturally relevant and culturally sustaining approaches to the integration of arts and the provision of arts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at the language for the Creative Economy Revitalization Act, I think that you'll see that that is part of what that at the federal level that they are trying to see. And I think really important what you mentioned in terms of arts integration strategies. And on the state level, if you recall last year, the governor introduced Clean California, which was, I think, over $1 billion program that's actually going locally And I encourage people to check in with their Department of Transportations in your local governments to find out what they are doing about their programs for Clean California, because artists, the original intention was the government put $75 million in for artists specifically for that program. And as you might know, particularly in California, there's a real emphasis on supporting communities that have been disinvested in terms and lifting up the voices of people and communities and cultures that have not had the same equitable access to having their stories told. And so I think that we see that in terms of advocates, that language is constantly being put in, both at the federal and state level. I think that that's, continues to evolve in terms of your politics, right, of how that actually happens. But in a progressive state like California, you're definitely seeing that as a priority in all aspects of state agencies right now. Hopefully that answers some of your question. Okay. And then I think we'll just take one more and then we'll keep going. But CB, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. I just want to kind of put a request out there that I'd love to see a lot more integration between the different government agencies specific to artists. So as an example, AB 5, which went into effect January 1st, 2020, required everybody in my field, which is filmmaking, to either incorporate and there was just a lot of confusion and continues to be about how do filmmakers pay other filmmakers? How do filmmakers receive payment, right? And do you have to be incorporated as an LLC enough? And so there needs to be some education on that. That whole process, going through that whole process, I can report the federal government understood it. So I was able to access PPP loan. I was able to access the IDL grant by simply stating, look, I used to be an independent contractor, but now I am incorporated. Right. And so even though these numbers look different, they're actually the same. However, Covered California has been an absolute nightmare to navigate with all those changes to AB 5. And so I think even if you all are able to do some workshops specific to artists for how to navigate those systems, and not just the individual artists, but family members that we might be supporting. So I have 2 children who were in Medi-Cal for counties, formerly known as Healthy Families for their health insurance. That got extended by the feds. I guess it's CHIP at the Fed level. It got extended by the feds until they're 19. Well, now they're 19. Does that mean this year when they turn 20, they lose their health insurance? Does my employer have to provide them health insurance? Should they get their own health insurance? Like there's all these intricacies that I think all of us as artists are dealing on a daily basis that have a ripple effect on our economy that really need to be understood within these contexts of California law, California programs, and not everybody's an employee in a traditional sense. So that's my
that's so super right on. Thank you so much for articulating that so clearly. And absolutely, that is something that we are always looking at. How can we be the best at policy translation, as it were, in a sense, and giving you access to that information. It is often very, very confusing, and it is not designed for artists at all. And I think that is something that as policy development, we are absolutely focused on looking at in terms of how do we really support with policies and systems, not just relief grants, the artists and the creative sector and the arts worker and the culture worker. So thank you so much for that. I want to jump to the next part where we're going to actually, I think this is where, Cara, jump in here if you would for me, please.
Sure will. And Benjamin, I want to acknowledge your question. We will respond to that. That's a great question that you had in the chat. So now we are hoping to hear from you vis-a-vis a survey, and then we also want to have a discussion with you as well. But this, by being able to collect a little bit of data and input from you, we're able to really help shape the work that we do. So if you would and share with us, and we're just going to take a little bit of time together here as a group to open up a survey link, which Tracy has put in the chat. If there's any issues opening that, please let us know. Know that your answers will be kept confidential. Many of the questions are all optional. So we're just hoping that you will respond to the best of your ability in that survey. We're going to take about 10 minutes to fill out the survey, and then we are going to come back for some discussion. So it's 3:40 right now. So we will come back as a group for discussion at 3:50. So we're hoping you'll open your survey. And if 10 minutes isn't enough time for you for the survey, feel free to leave the survey open and fill it out as we go, or submit it as the meeting wraps up. But we're hoping that you'll submit your surveys today if you are able.
And we estimated 10 minutes. We don't anticipate, it might not even take you that long. We tried to be cognizant that people are really burnt out on surveys, but it is really important for us to gather this type of information, and we'll do it on all 11 regional conversations. So we'll really have a good aggregate of what are some of the pain points and issues and things that we need to help focus on. So if you're having trouble opening the link, we'll take a look at that. Let's see, it seems to work for me. Is anybody else having trouble? Please put it in the chat there. Pat, does that mean you're having trouble? You can speak up.
Yes, same here.
Yes.
Okay, well, lots of people can't open the link. Tech folks behind the scenes are gonna try and see why that is. We'll maybe stop sharing the slideshow so we don't see what you're doing over there, Eddie. Yeah, thanks. All right, well, while we're trying to figure that, and see, this is what happens when you get to be the first regional conversation of 11, we figure out the tech problems. Is anyone able to access it? If you copy and paste it in another window, it will work.
Yeah, you have to copy, you have to drag your mouse over it, click it, and it's not clickable. It just, yeah, you have to drag your mouse over it and then hit Control-C or right click.
Oh, interesting. Thank you so much for that.
I was able to click on it.
Yeah, so it's weird. It might be different computers. So if enough of you are able to access it, we would love for you to try and do that. We will also be sending it as a follow-up. There were 130 people who registered for today, and about 50 so have shown up. So we're going to send it to everyone as well. But we also know that you're a captive audience right now. So we're trying to get you to do it right now, if you would. We really, really appreciate the feedback and the help. So I'll stop talking right now so you can focus on your answers. If you have other questions, please also start putting those in the chat so we can address those as soon as we come back. Thanks.
Well, I'm curious if you were last on this new show that's on E! I love the title. It's Relatively Famous Ranch Moves, and it's all in the title. All of these ranches are the offspring of celebrities. David Hasselhoff, Pat Benatar, Martin Lawrence, a lot of people who are trying their hand at the ranch life. So joining us right now to talk about how this went for her is Taylor Hasselhoff. Welcome back to TMZ Live. How you doing? If you what's the deal? I mean, expect you to come back to LA, you know, a little more petrified. Let me tell you, I was the first 2 weeks I got back to LA. I was wearing cowboy boots, having a buckle on my belt, back to where you're from. Okay, so you
Got about 3 more minutes to complete the 10.
Okay. Thanks for taking that space for the survey. We really appreciate it. Let me just change my view so I can see some people. We're going to come back for some discussion. And we wanted to sort of spend a few minutes here, about 5 or so minutes, just moving some of those open-ended questions from the survey into the space of discussion to sort of hear from you and to have more of a dialogue. And so one of the questions that we wanted to lead with and hear from people in the room is, what are your current needs or priorities? And is there anyone who wants to share their responses in that way here? And you may share by unmuting and speaking up, or you may put it in the chat as well. That's no problem.
I see that Tracy Brown has her hand raised. And I think it's been up for a little bit, so I don't know if that's something. Tracy, are you there?
I am. Hi, I just want to be polite and turn on my camera. Thank you so much for hosting this meeting. Some of the shortfalls that I've seen is with the grants and things that are available for individual artists, there doesn't seem to be a lot of support for senior artists. When we talk about things like the digital divide and that the way that it affects priority populations like the African American community and Tay youth, etc., who may be super talented but just not have the skill set to navigate the application or the application process, it would be great to see some additional support in that area. I know that a lot of senior artists who were working very actively were hit extremely hard when COVID hit. And we do what we can on an individual basis in the community, but it would be great to see additional support offered to them. Also, organizations like ACTA are amazing, and I know that you support the Alliance for Traditional Arts. One of the challenges that I've experienced with applying for grants is that it's very exclusive from artists who may be doing work in spiritual arts. So if, when you think about many cultures, we don't separate art and spirituality. So the minute anybody sees anything about spirit, they're like, oh, it's religious, we can't support that. And it's not the same thing. So I think some understanding is in order around how art shows up in culture truly, and not forcing artists who do work that includes spirituality to secularize their work, because that can feel very jarring for people as well. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Tracy. I think those are really so many critical points in what you just brought up. And this is so why these conversations are so valuable for us to hear directly from you. And that's why we invite you now to share with us what are your current needs or priorities that you're experiencing in either as an artist, a culture bearer, an arts organization, administrator, wherever you might fit into this. So does anyone else have anything else that they'd like to lift up at this time? And if you don't want to speak up, you can also put things in the chat. We can certainly capture it there as well. But this is where we hope to have some conversation. Or if anyone wants to respond to what Tracy has to say, please also speak up. Don't be shy.
Well, Julie, I'll say something quickly. This is Jenny from the Arts and Culture Commission in Contra, Costa County. We recently worked with the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts for the Artists Power Convenience Grant, and they really were the model that addresses the issues you brought up. And they had a whole team that worked with applicants that they could call in on the phone. Actually, somebody would pick up the phone and talk to them and really help them through the process. And they created a video about how to do the application. They made the application process not this 50-page application you have to apply to something, like really user-friendly. And so I definitely hope that they have that program again. They collaborated with counties throughout the Bay Area, which was the largest grants we ever had here in Contra Costa County's history. And so I hope to see that model throughout California and see that, because it was really wonderful.
That's terrific. Thank you, Jenny, for sharing best practices that are out there as well. And I've added the link in the chat. And Arthur asks, are we seeing that as a trend amongst funders? Arthur, do you want to speak a little bit more to what your question is?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. Arthur with CEN here. I'm just wondering what the trend is amongst funders. If there are some art funders here in this Zoom, would love to know if making it more simple and easy for artists to apply and arts organizations, especially smaller arts organizations and cultural arts organizations, making it easy for them to apply for funding. And is that something that I guess you all over at Californians for the Arts is kind of like being the overarching organization? Do you feel like that is, I guess, something that you would want to put out there in a sense that, oh yes, this is the trend. Here are some great pathways or models to emulate in terms of your funding. And I think that helps for arts advocacy overall, especially for artists. I can vouch, as I'm an artist as well. We don't want to read all the words. We just want to tell stories all day, right? So just asking some questions.
Those, again, great feedback, and absolutely that is something that has come up in many of our board meetings in terms of how do we make the grant process that we and hold the people that we are fighting for the funding for accountable, to make sure that they are doing it in an equitable and accessible fashion for everyone. In terms of trends, I think there are maybe some arts funders here that I would love. I know Rachel certainly as a county does give out grants. Rachel, and you've got your hand up. Did you want to comment specifically to that? Go ahead.
Hi, Arthur. Thanks for the question. So Rachel Sujima, I'm the director of the Alameda County Arts Commission. And we do have a grants program here for nonprofit arts and cultural organizations. And I am happy to be able to say that during COVID in 2020 and continuing, we greatly simplified our application process. It's so much shorter and streamlined, and we and the Alameda County Arts Commissioners recognized how important that is. We were able to distribute funds that were designated by the Alameda County Board of Supervisors for regranting CARES Act funds, and that was also a very simple process with an easy way to qualify. We are still waiting to hear if the Alameda County Board of Supervisors will dedicate some American Rescue funds to regrant to nonprofit arts and cultural organizations in Alameda County. And again, we hope to keep it extremely simple so that it's easy for people to apply and receive the funds. We were able to fund all of the applicants who applied for the CARES Act money and also our recent annual granting program. So I think people, I have also, I mean, I think we've heard from, if you receive a grant from some other major granting organizations, like Hewlett, I know they greatly simplified their process for responding and then reporting back. So I think it's definitely a trend. That's all.
Great. So one of the requests from the partners in this particular conversation was for us to talk a little bit about, well, we're not going to use the word advocacy, but more about the art of persuasion in terms of what we do and how you can be empowered as local advocates as well. So we're going to transition to that for a moment, and then we'll have more time also for questions and comments. And if you haven't filled out finish the survey, I think we've gotten some responses, and thank you to those who were able to. If you weren't able to finish, please try at before the end of day, and if not, just at some point soon, because it really is valuable for us to have that information. So I think I'm going, is that right, Tracy? Am I going into the next position? Okay, so let's go ahead and share the slides. Thanks everybody for bearing with us again. Hopefully, we're all just in this together and coming up with these wonderful opportunities to meet. So I think we're going to share again, and I'm going to just do a quick how to influence people and speak up for the arts. And thanks to Cara for that great title. So we'll go. Wait, before I get started, I see Roberto Bedoya's hand up, and I never ever would speak over him. So Roberto, want to join in the conversation? I know you're there. You unmuted. Roberto Bedoya. Okay. Well, he'll try again because I want to make sure he gets a chance to join in conversation with us. Just some quick definitions, difference between lobbying and advocacy. So lobbying is when we're actually directly trying to influence legislation, appropriations. There he is. Roberto Bedoya, did you want to join in? I can stop, and I'd love to hear from you. Oh, you're muted, I think. No, can't hear you. We'll try again. Still can't hear you. Okay, all right, we'll keep going. Come back, maybe refresh, because we definitely would love hearing from you. Always good insight. So basically, as a C4, we're not actually a C6, we're a C4, California Arts Advocates. That's where we do our direct lobbying. So when I show up in hearings, et cetera, I say I'm the executive director of California Arts Advocates. I often just change my glasses color, so that then they know the difference, right? And then advocacy, active support of an idea or cause expressed through strategies and methods that influence the opinions and decisions of people, legislators, policymakers, and organizations. Successful advocacy includes, and I think Arthur, you talked about what artists are so effective at, which is storytelling, and that's where we need you to engage in helping us tell the stories that persuade lawmakers to support and create systems to support arts and arts workers. It's about relationship building. It's about how do we make a specific ask at some point. And you can be a grass tops where you're doing direct advocacy, lobbying, having those relationships, or grassroots where it's really a combination of groups of people working together. So next slide. And here's kind of idea of what is the difference between grass tops and grassroots. And you know, the difference being more that you're talking directly to the people who can make the decision of whether or not you get that funding or whether or not we get legislation, versus kind of putting people together to influence all of that to happen. So go to the next one. So it's okay. Many of you, some of you run nonprofit arts organizations maybe, or affiliated with nonprofit arts organizations. There have been times when people say, oh no, I can't be advocating because I run a nonprofit. And we just want to say that's not true. You can even use a percentage of your nonprofit budget to directly lobby if you file a 501c(h) election form. But you can do things like thank and criticize. Publicly thank your legislators who vote in line with your agenda, or criticize those who don't. Now you might, that's a chance that you might take, that you want to think about long-term relationship development. And then you certainly can talk to them at their offices, town halls, ask questions. Excuse me, set up your own town hall, stage a public demonstration, register voters, and sponsor debate if all candidates can attend. You can't be focused on one particular candidate as a nonprofit. Next slide. Excuse me. Effective storytelling, these are from very broad ways to talk about the arts, share why arts are essential. Who do we serve? What is your impact on social services and your local community? What are you contributing to your local community? How do we strengthen communities and economies? What is the actual economic impact? And it's okay to articulate your challenges and what solutions would be most helpful, but we don't want to stand around saying we need a handout, right? We're desperate, we're a charity. We want to talk about our strength. And policymakers are more interested when we talk about how we can be part of the solution and not ask only for how we can be helped. Next slide. So these are a lot of comments here on messaging frameworks. Again, this will be available for you to download. Some of these even include links. What's critical about public funding is it really ensures all communities have access to the arts, versus, one of the things in trying to be the statewide the effective statewide advocacy organization for arts and culture and creative industries. We know that there are pockets in California that just don't have access to philanthropy. And there are pockets in California that have great access to philanthropy. So public funding ensures that everybody has access, not just those who have access to philanthropy. And it's really impactful in our rural communities. And we also have studies that show that, economies and communities rebounded faster after the Great Recession when they had a healthy arts and culture communities. So these are just some of the things that I'm not going to go through every one of these because you can certainly, everyone's available to read these and take them. But I think it's important for us to look at also, I think it was Danielle who mentioned about arts and culture improve health and well-being. There's some great resources on arts and health research from the University of Florida. We are jobs, we are workers, we are a part of the economy. I'm actually not a big fan of the term creative economy personally, just because I feel like it separates us from the regular economy. I think it's in merit for sure, but I think you want to always talk about how we are impactful to the whole economy, and that we're not just separated, because we don't want to be siloed. We want to be integrated into all sorts of aspects of solutions for even things like climate change, homelessness, transportation, social cohesion. Roberto Bedoya's wonderful and sense of belonging, and creative place keeping versus place making is really important as well. So here's something, just will provide you some of the framework. So next slide. So who to get to know, some of this for some of you is going to be really obvious, but you've got your local layer, level of who you want to get to know, your mayors, your city council members, your county board of supervisors, your school board members. All of those people hold influence in your communities, your local arts leaders, your arts commissioners, your arts councils, your local arts agencies like what Rachel and Jenny run, your regional advocacy organizations, which Rachel will speak to and the East Bay has, philanthropists and funders, people who hold influence and can help you to be successful in your work. Then you have your state legislators, and which are your assembly members and state senators, and of course, whoever is in what is called, the administration. Right now, it's Gavin Newsom's administration. And then you have your congressional representatives, your district house representative, and state senators. And you'd be surprised at how many people don't know the difference between all of these things. And if I say to them, who's your state senator, they'll tell me who their congressional representative is. So, and it's okay. This is part of, civic engagement 101, and that's all right. If you don't know, part of why we're here is to help you with that. So next slide. And we also have tools to help you look that up. Who are your representatives? Relationship building. One of the things I just want to stress is how important the relationship with a staff is in some of your representatives' offices. A lot of times people are disappointed when it's advocacy week and they don't actually get to meet with, Nancy, oh my gosh, I think I'm Nancy
Skinner.
Nancy Skinner, thank you. I'm like Phil Ting, Nancy Skinner, Nancy Pelosi, all these names are coming in my head, sorry. And although she's amazing, her staff are incredible, and developing those relationships with the staff is really, really important. There's lots of ways that you can develop a relationship with your elected official, and you can see some of them here. It's also important to understand, where do they sit within the framework? What committees do they sit on? Are they on a small business committee? Because the arts are really impactful in terms of small business. Are they on the budget committee? Are they on transportation, and you want to make sure that artists are hired to do public murals? Look at where they sit. Follow them. If you're on Twitter, follow them on Twitter, comment when they say things, thank them for their support of the arts, follow us, and then you can always share what we do. And this is something that I've said before, and I think it resonates particularly for folks who are in the nonprofit sector, but also if you're an artist yourself, which is steward your elected officials as you would a potential major donor or client. In this last year, to be honest with you, we saw over $200 million in line items go to specific arts organizations throughout the state, partly due to the budget surplus and those folks having relationships with their legislators. So, think of them as somebody who you need to develop a relationship with, just as you would your major funders in your communities. And I think, put it on your plan, right? Put it as part of your plan to engage with your elected officials, just as you would, oh shoot, I got to think about talking to my big foundations or to my big funders as well. I think you'll find a lot of value in that. Next slide. So making an ask is really a part of it. Don't miss the opportunity. Sometimes you're just, as you do with a major donor, you're there to just build the relationship, have them get to know who you are, et cetera. But you also, when the time is right, you need to, if you're there to make a specific ask, be prepared with facts and also tell your story effectively, narratives, understand landscape. When is the budget decided? When are bills introduced? Don't come to them when everything's already been done and then you're asking them for help. So do your homework. It's all out there. Good, thanks to Google. Find out what you can about their special interests and favorite causes. A lot of times, usually there's some way that you can connect them to the arts, whether that's through their children, whether that's through veterans and post-traumatic stress disorder, whether that's through murals in the community that they know have made their day and their commute better. There's some way that you can connect to them. And if you follow them, you'll start to get a sense of what they care about and their interests are, and you can start to cater your own messages to that as well. And then be clear on what you're asking for and how you will help them to get the support they need. In other words, as your advocacy organization, for example, we don't just go out and say, hey, we need this for the arts, and then we walk out the room and never show up again. We show up and we show up and we show up, and we bring you with us. And then therefore they know that their constituents care about this. Let's be honest, elected officials are elected. They are there for you. So you are their constituents. You have every right to make your asks, and just like anybody else. Next slide. There's some really good tools that you can use. And Rachel's done this for Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month, but also you can do things like adopt a resolution from your city council or board of supervisors. In this case, we're still potentially in relief mode to allocate, maybe they haven't done all their ARP, American Rescue Plan funding. I heard that just recently from somebody in a municipality, and they're trying to get funding for the arts in their community. So see if you can get a resolution to say that they will actually broadly do this, and then you kind of got already started. And that's happened in LA, and Arts for LA has a really good toolkit on that as well. And, sometimes it's helpful to make a coalition ask. A lot of times in the arts, we're very, very siloed. And so we've got visual artists over here. We've got the performing arts over here. We've got the for-profit live events over here, museums over there, and we don't often talk to each other. When you're in your region and your community, make sure you're connecting with each other and finding out what you might find to have some very common asks or common problems that public policy or public allocations can help solve. And you want to come together in doing that. A lot of times elected officials, they're not the experts on arts and culture. You are, right? You're the expert on what you need. And so part of it is bringing that to them. But as much as we can speak as one voice, we are going to get a lot further. And we saw that very effectively in our last year when we joined in coalition with NIVA California, National Independent Venues Association, as well as California Association of Museums. And of course, look for help from people in your community that are already doing this type of work, because there's a lot of excellent resources that you can tap into. So next slide. Trying to be mindful of keeping the time going here. And that's, again, kind of the idea of building your local coalitions. The other thing is engaging business and community leaders, using their positions to influence decision makers. We all know that if you're running an arts organization in your community, it's benefiting all the other things that are right around it, for example, right? The downstream benefits. You want to make sure that those folks are also speaking up for you. We very intentionally reach out to tourism industry. We reach out to the restaurant coalitions. We reach out to all these other ancillary businesses, hotels that benefit from a ripe arts and culture sector in your community. And of course, media partners. I got called yesterday by KQED because they're starting to see cancellations. They want to know what's happening to our sector. Become the expert in your community that the media can rely on to know that if they call, that they'll get a good, reliable voice about what's happening for the arts in your particular community. Next slide. I think we're almost there. Yeah, so we've got a lot of toolkits and templates on our website. We're actually going to be updating our website this year. We're going to really beef out the whole area on resources, because there's so much good data and there's so many good things that you can access. There is no point in reinventing the wheel. And definitely check out our video library, where you can connect with conversations about arts advocacy in California. And all of this is linked. And if you're interested, you'll get a copy of this probably today or tomorrow or the next day. And then join us during Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month, we'll talk about in a minute too, which is in April. Every year it was a designation by the Senate and Assembly back in 2019. And it's really a way for us all to come together, not only to celebrate and recognize the value and impact of our industry and of the workers, but also for us to really advocate on our behalf with some specific legislative asks. Next slide. Just some other resources, some really great organizations we have in here in the state of California. Our emphasis is overall on the industry and the creative workforce. Create California, which is formerly California Alliance for Arts Education, is really focused on arts education. There's actually a ballot measure that maybe some of you have heard about that Austin Buettner brought forward. So we're tracking that. But Create California is an amazing go-to resource for arts ed. So if you're an arts educator on this call and you're not familiar with them, please go there. They have incredible toolkits. If you're in a symphony or associated with that, League of American Orchestras is great. If you're, and so there's a number of groups here, and Association of California Symphony Orchestras specifically to California. So lots of great resources out there, and these are just a highlight and a sample, and more to come. Next slide. And here it is. So I'm going to hand this back, I think, to Cara to just talk a little bit more about that. And then we've got about 15 minutes left to engage in more conversations and hear back more from you. So thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Julie. And I'll just take up a couple minutes of time just to talk about Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month for this April in 2022. This year's theme is the arts work. And if Eddie, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. Wanted to give you a sense of what you can be expecting for programming and engagement there for Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. We're going to be planning a kickoff webinar for on March 25th, so save the date. We'll be going through our toolkit at that time, which will be distributed, and we'll have lots of other additional advocacy tools to be used specifically with elected officials and also for you to use in your own community and social media. April 1st through 29th, every Friday. So that's every Friday in April at 12 p.m. You just hold the time. If you want to spend your lunch hour with us, we'll have webinars on weekly topics, all related to the theme, the arts work. Advocacy Week is April 25th through 29th. It will be mostly virtual meetings with your state elected officials. And we're working and hoping towards some version of an in-person advocacy day in Sacramento on April 27th. And there'll be more information about that as it comes out. And of course, we are very concerned about everyone's health and safety. So stay tuned for more information about that. And with that, I think we'll move into another round of discussion. I know we have some hands up, and so I want to start there. Let's see. I see Connie, your hand is up.
Yes, hi, I'm Connie Chu. I'm kind of here by myself today, but I am with the Fremont Cultural Arts Council. But anyway, I am interested in knowing, like right now, I'm outside of this hat. I have other hats, but outside of here, I have been in other groups where we are, deciding whether or not to endorse candidates. Are there any arts groups that actually do that type of thing?
I mean, yes. Some of state advocacy organizations like ours through their C4s do that. So California Arts Advocates could potentially do that. You've seen Arts Action Fund at the federal level. They also, at times, they actually give money to candidates as well. And anybody else have anyone in the state who endorses candidates at this point in time? I am not knowing of anyone else in the arts sector in the state that's doing that.
Okay, so just wondering if they have, they're looking at all the candidates coming up for the next election. And okay, that's good to know. I'd be interested in knowing like who they look at and who they choose. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Connie, a lot of arts organizations do sort of like a report card on, how have they voted. One of the things that we do have on our website, and we can give you also, are questions that you can ask at candidate forums that are specifically how to assess whether or not that candidate is someone who would then vote in favor of the arts. So that's something that we can certainly give you at this point in time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. And I see Roberto, is it working? Let's see. Can you speak, Roberto? Is your sound working? No. Oh, well, okay. So if you have something to, please add it into the chat. Rachel.
Hi, I just wanted to say, Julie mentioned this, but I wanted to report that there is an independent coalition of art supporters here in the East Bay called the East Bay Arts and Cultural Alliance. And it was founded by Susie Medic at Berkeley Rep and Lori Fogarty at the Oakland Museum. And I think they were not able to be here today, but it's my understanding that they plan on having an open meeting, open to all, in January or February, in which they'll be discussing sort of the current issues and plans for 2022. And Julie, I'd like to propose that when you send out a follow-up to everybody who signed up for this webinar, that there be a way to connect people to that. And I just want to say that I, for many years, have been the captain, regional captain for the legislative visits, which are now virtual, in which we'll meet with our state level elected officials. So I invite all of you to participate. I know you're going to get lots of emails from Julie's great team to invite you to be involved. So, but it's a great way to connect with our elected officials. And I always start the meeting with asking them, how are they involved in the arts? And people tell stories about their childhood or their kids or what they love to do. So it really is a great way to connect with them.
All right, is there any other just general things that anybody else would like to share with us at this time? I think there's about 46 of you still left on the call, and I'm seeing a couple of questions maybe coming up. The group of just mentioned that helps move so fast. I missed the name of the org.
For that follow-up question.
Oh.
Yeah, I do have a question for Rachel, and thank you so much, and thank you all here as organizer to support art and culture. But like, I know I'm based in San Diego, but
I said also I could
apply work in Bay Area. That's because I do have a lot of family and, you know, like relatives in there, and also I know there's a huge community of Chinese community in Bay Area. So that's my first question. Second question is, I don't have a business registered. So
Hey, Danielle, there's something wrong with your audio. And so if you could actually put your questions in the chat,
yeah,
we'll be able to address those. And it sounds like they're very specific too. So we'll try and do our best to address those. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
You know, I wanted to say something really quick. Julie, one of your staff members put the East Side Arts Alliance in the chat, but it's actually the East Bay Arts and Cultural Alliance. That's the advocacy group. East Side Arts Alliance is a great, terrific organization, but that's not the advocacy group that's trying to be a coalition to serve whole East Bay. So follow up to all of you through Julie.
Excellent. Anything else people would like to lift up at this time? We have about 6 minutes left, and just I think we'll get into wrap up. So Cara.
Yeah, Jenny, I wanted to, not to put you on spot, but save space for you if there's anything from Contra Costa County that you wanted to lift up or share here in this space related to advocacy, current initiatives and stuff there.
Well, I thank you for that opportunity to do that. I think for us, one of the most important things that we were able to do is really incorporate the arts into Envision CC 2040, which is the Contra Costa County's general plan. And it didn't have the arts in it. So if you don't have the strong foundation to build those arts and those future programs, you can have as many personal projects you want, but you have to have it in the constitution of Contra Costa County. So that to me is like one of the wonderful things that we just started to actually be part of that conversation. And so we look forward to that and building on that. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is we identified a need for updated arts and cultural prospectus for Contra Costa County, and we hired Art Builds Community, which is this incredible firm, and they're doing the data, they're doing the research, and as we know, information is power when you identify cultural stakeholders, and then you're able to advocate from the local to the state to the national. So right now we're getting the information, and keep your eyes on us.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being such a great partner in this conversation. And thank you to Rachel as well. And Rachel, is there anything else that you didn't get to share today that you might want to share before we close out here?
Thanks, fabulous Californians for the Arts team. Nice to see everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to our partners. Thank you to Julie and our staff here at CFTA. Everyone who helped make this happen, and thank you to all of you for your input and for showing up here today. And this obviously won't be the last time you're hearing from us. They're very accessible. Make sure you have our contact information in multiple iterations. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. We will be following up with the materials from this meeting, and there'll be lots of good information in there as well.
And please fill out the survey if you didn't get a chance. We would really, we need your input in order to effectively do the work at the state level. So thank you so much, everyone, for showing up here today. And we look forward to hopefully a very productive and safe and healthy 2022. Take care.